Alright, Internet, I am feeling the flow! Today, I want to talk about science and XYZ Summoning, and how Yusei Fudo used science to develop XYZ Summoning. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal was a weird time for the franchise. While all of the previous anime series at least tried to act like they belonged in a single chronology, Zexal was the first show to really strike out on its own. It paid scant allusion to Duel Monsters and GX while seeming to ignore 5Ds altogether, leaving fans to question whether the shows were canon to one another at all. XYZ monsters had replaced Synchro Summoning as the primary extra deck type, and Turbo Duels, the divisively awesome sport of playing card games on motorcycles, had vanished altogether. But what if I told you that Zexal cannot take place in another timeline? That it is impossible for the world to turn into this without first going through all of this? And the reason why? Time travel. For anyone who needs a quick refresher, Yusei Fudo was the fan-favorite protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. His father was the leading researcher on a renewable energy project sponsored by the Kaiba Corporation called Moment. Eventually, Yusei comes into conflict with Iliaster, a time-traveling organization founded by the survivors of a post-apocalyptic future in which Moment gained sentience and wiped out the human race in a Judgment Day-style apocalypse. Using technology from their future, Iliaster set out to erase Moment from the timeline, but each time they successfully changed the past, the world of the present was altered to reflect its new history. Time never splintered into multiple realities, it simply rewrote itself to keep continuity with its new past. Only the signers, and those protected by future technology, possess any memory of how time existed prior to the change, which we see when Iliaster uses the Infinity device to erase the Momentum Express building from history, and when Paradox travels back in time in order to kill Duel Monsters creator Maximilian Pegasus. The future begins to unravel and fade away, suggesting that reality can no longer support itself now that its past no longer exists. So, unless absolutely everything about 5Ds was erased sometime after the show's conclusion, it has to exist on the same timeline as Zexal. Moreover, Yusei's primary motivation throughout the series is to honor his father's legacy by correcting the flaws in the Momentum system in order to build Old Man Fudo's vision of a better future. A future that I have repeatedly said we get to see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Heartland City is a technological paradise. Automated robots perform civil services throughout the town. The average single-income family can afford a computer setup like this. Solid vision has been replaced with a much more interactive augmented reality vision. How is this not the technological wonderland that 5Ds promised us Moment would lead to? So how exactly do we get from here to here? Well, as I discussed in the previous video on how Seto Kaiba invented Synchro Summoning, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is the most scientifically accurate of all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows. At least, up to a point. The show's Moment reactors generate power by utilizing a form of nuclear fission that revolves around Synchro Summoning. Just like real-world fission reactions work by splitting unstable isotopes by bombarding them with atomic particles, Momentum reactions occur by bombarding Duel Monster spirits with Yusei particles, which are contained within tuner monsters. The result is a massive release of heat energy that can be converted into electricity and that leaves newly evolved Synchro monsters behind as a radioactive byproduct. Something that Iliaster repeatedly tells us began to mutate humanity's evolutionary line in their apocalyptic future. Strangely enough, this flaw is never actually addressed by the time the heroes defeat Zone at the end of the series. Sure, Yusei and his team of scientists developed the Fortune program in order to spread Momentum's workload out amongst multiple reactors, preventing the possibility of another Zero Reverse type incident. But the whole genetic unraveling thing is still kind of an issue. This explains why Synchro cards and Duel Runners, which are both dependent on fission-based momentum reactions in order to be produced, would have faded from common usage by the time of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. But without the ability to power Moment reactors, New Domino City and the rest of the world would have been faced with an energy crisis. The obvious leap in logic is that XYZ monsters replace Synchros as the world's dominant power source. But where did they even come from? They didn't exist in the original future where Zone and company outlived the rest of humanity, meaning their presence in Zexal has to be the result of something that happened in 5Ds. But the show never really gives us much to work with on that front. In fact, while researching this video, the only thing I could find that was even close to an official explanation for where XYZ monsters came from was in the info booklet of the 2011 TCG starter deck, Dawn of the XYZ, which simply reads that XYZ monsters are made from antimatter and have traveled here through the other side of a black hole. That's it. That's literally all they gave us. That said, it actually does kind of work as a starting point, as antimatter can theoretically be used as an energy source with a higher capacity factor than nuclear power, and that just happens to be what suddenly scientist Yusei needs to find in order to stop the rise of card game-based mutation. We also know that the Number Monsters, a series of 100 XYZ cards, were created by the Numeron Dragon, the divine being who created the universe. And believe it or not, that actually tracks with some scientific theory. I mean, the antimatter part does, not the magical dragon thing. Okay, let me explain. Matter is made up of atoms, and the protons, neutrons, and electrons that make up those atoms all have electric charges. Antimatter, just like the name implies, is the opposite of matter, meaning those charges are reversed. When matter and antimatter come into contact with one another, they cancel one another out in a detonation of ionizing radiation in a process that we call annihilation. Fortunately for us, our universe is 99.99% made up of regular old matter, which is a good thing since we're not constantly walking into antimatter and exploding, but also a confusing thing. You see, experiments conducted by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, suggest that particles and antiparticles are formed in pairs, which in turn suggests that when the universe was created during the Big Bang, matter and antimatter should have been created in equal quantities. So, where is all of the missing antimatter in the universe? We do not know. The matter-antimatter asymmetry problem, as it's called, remains one of the most enigmatic scientific mysteries in physics. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Presents an answer to this in the form of XYZ monsters. And just like the Dawn of the XYZ starter deck tells us that antimatter-based XYZ monsters arrived through a black hole, real-world physicists have theorized that there might be entire other universes out there composed primarily of antimatter, and that those universes might exist on the other side of black holes. Now, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, a black hole is a giant stellar event with a core so compact and dense that it produces a gravitational field strong enough that nothing can escape from it, not even the photons that make up light, hence the name. But wouldn't you know it, we actually see Yusei break this rule near the end of 5Ds. During their Death Course Turbo Duel, Antimony performs a feat known as Delta XL Synchro Summoning, a process so destructive that it collapses a nearby star and creates a new black hole. Though Yusei and Antimony fall into its event horizon, Yusei is able to synchronize with the moment system back on Earth in order to exceed the speed of light and escape from the black hole's singularity. Don't try that in real life, it won't work. Nonetheless, 5D's ending with the creation of a brand new stellar black hole and Konami's claims that XYZ monsters are derived from black holes probably isn't a coincidence. Notice the explosion of energy produced by the star's collapse? Yusei and Antimony are showered with light and particles that strongly resemble the light and particle shows seen during each and every XYZ summon throughout the course of Zexal. So assuming the black hole that we see at the end of 5Ds is the portal to the antimatter dimension where XYZ monsters reside, how would Yusei and his team of scientists go about bringing them to Earth? And more importantly, how would they prevent them from exploding immediately as soon as they come into contact with the matter that makes up Earth's atmosphere? Well, we already mentioned the answer to the first question earlier in this video, and that is infinity. Infinity is a piece of technology that originated in Zone and Iliaster's Nightmare Future, and was brought back in time when they launched their crusade to derail Project Momentum. It's a device that uses Yusei particles in order to distort reality and create temporary, stable wormholes. For those of you who didn't watch quite enough Star Trek growing up, a wormhole is a theoretical anomaly connecting two different points in reality. The ones that are seen in 5Ds are used to travel between different points in time, but they can also link various parts of space. In fact, according to Clark Smith in the 5Ds anime, the technology was first developed in order to replace conventional rocket propulsion-based systems for space exploration, the same kind of exploration Seto Kaiba originally pioneered in order to develop dual monster spirits like the Neo-Spacians. And we know for a fact that this technology has carried forward into the Zexal era, as Heartland City just happens to use wormhole technology as part of its sanitation department, blasting collected trash through portals in order to send it out into space rather than letting it stack up in landfills and fall into the ocean like we do here in the real world. And with that information, we have everything we need to explain how Yusei Fudo, scientist extraordinaire, solved the momentum problem once and for all. Antimatter needs to be sealed in a vacuum, otherwise particles will collide with particles of regular matter and boom, there goes the neighborhood. Scientists have only managed to contain what few particles of antimatter they've generated in a lab for periods of up to 15 minutes by keeping it in a magnetic field. But of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Accomplishes this by using even more magic trading cards. Overlay units orbit newly formed Xyz monsters in the same way that electrons orbit the magnetic field of an atom, preventing an unintended antimatter detonation every time someone decides that they want to play a game of cards. So putting all of this into perspective, once Yusei and the team behind Project Moment realized that they had to find an alternative to the old synchro method of generating power, they would have been forced to start looking for a new means of producing monster cards. By salvaging the remains of the Infinity device used as part of Iliaster's grand design, Yusei could begin exploring the vast cosmos of space for the answers to his problem, including the black hole that he helped create during the duel with Antimony. Upon making contact with the monster spirits on the other side of the black hole, he could safely perform delta and limit over Zexal synchro summoning to travel faster than the speed of light and bring them into our reality, sacrificing normal monsters in order to safely contain them within magnetic fields, and allowing them to be summoned using dual monster cards. Much like Duel Runners utilized Yusei particle technology in order to initiate fission reactions, the Zexal-era dual pads would have to work in conjunction with miniaturized Infinity machines in order to produce temporary wormholes. And because antimatter reactions are 100% proficient, they do not generate harmful radiation, making XYZ summoning a fun and safe alternative to the old synchro summoning method of generating power. But what do you think about Yusei developing XYZ summoning? Do you think this is how it happened, or did those sexy black cards come from somewhere else? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And, as I promised last time, the next theory video will cover Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains and the Ritual Dimension, teeing us up to finally discuss the complete Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga timeline. If you're looking forward to any of that, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new video. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!